Okay, so this lesson is on factoring when your leading coefficient is not 1. Again, the textbook probably will not call it this. You can feel free to look over examples that the textbook has, but I really like the method that I've taught for the past few years. It seems to help the students find a definite way to find their answers, much like the two-step process. So if you'll recall what we did last section and notice my notes say 9, it's because it's what I used in the other book. I really like this method, so I'm not using what the book uses, I'm using this way. But if you'll recall from section 7.5, we had a process where we would say, okay, if I have x squared plus bx plus c, and again, notice my leading coefficient is 1 here. Whenever my leading coefficient is positive 1, I can use the two-step process. So the two-step process would give me a value p and a value q that were multiples of a value c, but added up to a value b. So p times q is c, and that's what we kind of deal with first, and then make sure that it works for p plus q equals b. And then our answer was simply x plus p, x plus q. And sometimes we ended up having different signs and having to deal with those negative signs would factor in. But for example, over here again, recall two-step process, we want to list out the factors of 6. 1 and 6 and 2 and 3 are our only factors. We want to find the factors of positive 6 that would add up to positive 5. That's going to be 2 and 3. Again, signs are important. So this 5 is positive, so we have to make sure that it adds up to 5. If the sign of 5 was negative, we would have a different way to do this. But step 1, we would say blank times blank equals 6, blank plus blank equals 5, and then we fill in our blanks. Well, we know 2 and 3 work, and then we just have our answer at step 2, and we're all done. Now, the 5-step process, again, it's a process, so it's going to be pretty similar, but it won't be quite as quick. So we'll have to kind of really follow along and make sure we're doing what is in the example here. Okay, so now that we have the 5-step process, we're going to now, because our value of a, our leading coefficient, is no longer 1, we have to account for this value somehow in our process. So our new step 1 is to take our leading coefficient times our constant. So we take a times c, and we make up this whole new variable called d. Now that we have this new variable d, that instead of c, for the second step, that's what we're going to use. We're going to use p times q, p plus q, just like in the last one, but instead of multiplying up to our constant c, we're going to multiply up to our new value that we found in step 1. Then for step 2, we use those. So now in step 3, what we do is we say ax squared plus px plus qx plus c. So basically what we end up with is something that looks like we can factor by grouping, and what we'll do is we'll take a common factor out. So we'll factor in step 4, greatest common factor out of both, and then factor both by grouping. The 5-step process looks very difficult, but I recommend that you write this down. Step 1, a times c equals d. Step 2, blank times blank equals d. Blank plus blank equals b. Step 3, ax squared plus px is in parentheses, and then plus qx in parentheses plus c. So again, these are grouped together, and these are grouped together, and so when it says factor out the greatest common factor from each set of parentheses, there should be 2 different greatest common factors that you take out, then you factor by grouping again. So again, you guys, we will spend multiple days doing this process. It is not easy, and I don't anticipate that anyone gets perfect at it right away. But in this video, please make sure that you take the time to pause and try it on your own when I tell you to pause. So actually do pause when we get to those examples. Okay, so now that we have an example, what we're going to do is we're going to say a times c is equal to d. And again, a times c, we're going to say 2 times 3 is going to give me my new value for d, which is 6. So that was step 1. We took a times c. Step 2, we're going to say blank times blank is equal to d. and then we say blank plus blank is equal to our value of b. Again, all we need to do is fill in D and B. So D's value was 6. B's value from up above is -7. So now what I want are the values of 6 that would give me -7. Well, if my multiple is positive and my sum is negative, I know that both factors need to be negative. The only way that works is if 6 and 1 are both negative. Here's where it gets kind of different from what we saw in the two-step process. Step 3 is take ax squared. So what's our ax? We look up above. Ax squared is 2x squared. That's the exact same value. 2x squared plus, it does not matter. Oh, and I don't want to write plus because it's negative, but we want to write minus 1x. Again, the x's are very important. Don't forget about those. And then we put plus in the middle, -6x. Both of those factors get an x, and then plus 3. Okay, so then what we want to do is factor out the greatest common factor from each for step 4. The greatest common factor of this is just an x. Nothing else comes off of both things. So in this set of parentheses, all I can take off is an x. When I do that, I end up with 2x minus 1. The other set of parentheses, now here's kind of a clue, you guys. We want the other set of parentheses to look like this when we factor something out. So if I look at this, if I take a positive 3 out, that would be okay, but I would end up with -2x plus 1. So what I'm going to do is factor out a -3 and end up with 2x minus 1. So now I have two different sets of -2x minus 1 that I can factor off. So step 5, I'll write up above. I write 2x minus 1, and then what is left are my other factors. So x and -3 are my other factors in parentheses, x minus 3. So that's the process, you guys. Again, I do not anticipate that you picked up that. Just going through that one example took me 2.5 minutes. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a process. But if you need to watch that again, back it up and watch it again because it kind of goes over it. I'll do another one here with you, but when I say practice one, make sure you practice one. Alright, so one more time, you guys, again, I'd really like you guys to just watch and not worry about writing things down. So I'm going to do one more for you. So step 1 is a times c, and again, I don't anticipate that this is where you guys get lost. A times c, 3 times -5, 3 times -5 gives me -15, and that's my value for d. Step 2, we're going to say blank times blank is equal to d, and we're going to say blank plus blank is equal to our value for b. So if I look up above, my value for d was -15, my value for b is 14. So again, I'm going to write out my factors of 15, 1 and 15, and then 3 and 5. That's it. I want to get to 14 and it's positive. My factor is negative, so that means only one of my numbers is negative. And if I want 14 to be positive, I should let 15 be positive and the 1 be negative. Now, it does not matter the order in which you write these in here. My third step is ax squared. I'll write it out. Ax squared plus fill in the blank times x plus fill in the blank times x plus c. So again, when I go to fill in my blanks, I want to fill in for ax squared also. Ax squared is 3x squared. We're going to use plus 15x plus, my other one is -1x minus 5. When I go to factor this time, so step 4, that's step 3. Just writing that down is step 3. Step 4 is factoring. So if I look at 3x squared and 15x, my greatest common factor is 3x. What I have left is x plus 5. If I look at the next set of parentheses, again, I have a negative sign in there that I don't want in here. So what I'm going to do is factor out something, and nothing is there. So what I'm going to factor out is -1, and then all I'm left with is x plus 5. Again, I want those two things to look exactly the same. If they don't, I need to change the sign or I've done something wrong, because step 5 is factor again. So when I factor again, the shared factor is x plus 5. That's the shared factor. What's left is 3x minus 1. So there's your answer, x plus 5, 3x minus 1. Again, rewind, watch this again. My next two I'll have to kind of cut short because I can only post these videos so long. So I'm going to give you two to practice, and I really want you to practice them, but when I go to show you the answers might be the only thing that you see. If you need to see them worked out, that's something that we can do in class. Alright, so take about 10-15 seconds. Pause the video right here, copy these problems down, do whatever you got to do, but write these out and then try the 5-step process on them. And what I'll do is I'll pause right now and I'll work them out and show all the work so that you guys can check your answer. And what I'll have you do is just wait another like 5 or 10 seconds and have you check your answer. So go ahead and pause right now, have these copied down, and just wait. Alright, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to try these. Again, just for lack of time, I couldn't write these out and talk through them, but I'm still going to kind of explain things. So again, step 1, a times c gives us 12. I wrote the factors of 12 out over here. I wanted the factors of 12 that added up to 8. The biggest mistake that students make is in step 3. And again, all step 3 is copying things down correctly. But some of the things that students will do if you didn't get the answer down here, guys, is they forgot the x's. That's a very common mistake. Another common mistake is that this number isn't the correct number. Again, this number at the back comes from the formula that was given. The number at the front comes from the formula that was given. The only thing that changes is the fact that we took this 8x in the middle and we ripped it apart into two different factors so that we could factor by grouping in steps 4 and 5. Again, I could only take out a factor of x, so that leaves me with 3x plus 2. I could only take out a factor of 2. That leaves me with another 3x plus 2, so I get 3x plus 2 and x plus 2 for my answer. On letter D, letter D, another kind of interesting thing came up that will happen from time to time. We have a negative for one pop-up. Negative and a positive gives us a negative factor. I listed my factors of 28 out, and again, I know that because this is negative that I have one of these two numbers is negative, and what I look at is the fact that this is positive 12, so I want the 14 to be positive, the 2 to be negative. Again, negative 4x plus 14x plus negative 2x plus 7, and then I factor out what I can. Here's one of the interesting things. If I look at this, I can take out a 2x out of the first set of parentheses, and I'm left with negative 2x plus 7. The second set of parentheses, nothing can be factored. So what I have to do is be smart and understand that there's a factor of 1 right here and just copy this down. So when I go to factor by grouping, I take the negative 2x plus 7 off, and then 2x plus 1 is my other factor. You can't just put a 0 because if I multiply by 0, everything goes away. So again, that's the lesson in a gist. Like I said, guys, I do not anticipate that any of you guys will get this right away. Please take your time on the homework.